Good morning. It's Monday the 4th of March. After 2.5 years of training, my name has just been approved to go on the Leeds Anglican Diocesan list of spiritual directors. It's been a fascinating journey for me, delving deeply into the treasures of 2,000 years of Christian spirituality and learning what it means to accompany another person on their spiritual journey. One of the most prominent and highly regarded authors in this area of Christian ministry over the last century has been Henri Nouwen. His books are fabulous, and one of them, Spiritual Direction, Wisdom for the Long Walk of Faith, has been one of our key texts. This morning, as we continue our journey through the season of Lent, I simply want to offer to you some of his words from a chapter titled, Where Do I Begin? He offers us these thoughts. Living a spiritual life is far from easy. The human spirit does not quickly conform to God's design. Being formed in God's likeness involves the struggle to move from absurd living to obedient listening. The word absurd includes the word sardos, which means deaf. Absurd living is a way of life in which we remain deaf to the voice that speaks to us in our silence. The many activities in which we are involved, the many concerns that keep us preoccupied, and the many sounds that surround us make it very hard for us to hear the sheer silence through which God's presence is made known. It seems that the noisy, busy world conspires against our hearing that voice and tries to make us absolutely deaf. It therefore is not surprising that we often wonder, in the midst of our very occupied and preoccupied lives, if anything is truly happening. Our lives may be filled with many events, so many events that we often wonder how we can get them all done. At the same time, we may feel unfulfilled and wonder if being busy but bored, involved yet lonely, is a symptom of the absurd life. The life in which we no longer hear the voice of the one who created us and who calls us to a new life. This absurd life is extremely painful because it makes us feel as if we are living in exile, cut off from the vital source of our existence. The obedient life develops our abilities to hear and sense God's presence and activities. The word obedience includes the word audere, which means listening. The obedient life is one in which we listen with great attention to God's Spirit within and among us. The great news of God's revelation is not simply that God exists, but also that God is actively present. Our God is a God who cares, heals, guides, directs, challenges, confronts, corrects, and forms us. God is a God who wants to lead us closer to the full realization of our humanity. To be obedient means to be constantly attentive to this presence and to allow God, who is only love, to be the source as well as the goal of all we think, say, or do. All of the disciplines of the spiritual life are intended to help us to move from an absurd or deaf life to an obedient or listening life of freedom, joy, and peace. I wonder, what helps or hinders you from being attentive to the presence and action of God in your life? Let's take a short moment of silence to sense where the Spirit of God is nudging us, and then I'll pray. God who speaks and listens, God who is active in our lives, Help us to take time to develop stillness, space, silence, that we might become more attentive to your work in our lives and our world. Amen.